Hey, good Friday morning, everybody. It's First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. We're tracking the development of a pretty massive nor'easter that's going to develop off the southeast coast and really hammer parts of North Carolina and the Outer Banks. This is really starting to look a pretty significant storm. A couple days ago, it looked like it might be a small low pressure, but as I get to today, this thing looks like it's going to cause maybe some serious damage, especially on the Outer Banks. So, friends out there, this is something to keep an eye on. Here's the development of the system. It's a low pressure that's basically starting to form over Florida, and it's starting to move off the Georgia, South Carolina coast. What you're seeing here is I put isobars on here, but I also put the wind field just to show you how strong the winds are developing out of the east and northeast. And again, a lot of folks, they hear the term nor'easter and they think that means it happens in the northeast. No, it actually means it's the wind it produces. The northeast wind with low pressure on the east coast produces a persistent northeast wind on the coast. So you can get nor'easters technically from Florida all the way up to Maine. We just kind of hear about them more in New England and the northeast. It has to do with the wind they produce, not the location that they form. So there's our nor'easter beginning to take shape. And it's an impressive system. I mean, when you look at the satellite imagery here, I'll look at the visible imagery. You can actually see the surface low trying to transition to the coast here. Very impressive already as it begins to develop and push off towards the east. And this is really just the beginning. Let me show you the water vapor loop. There's an upper level piece of energy that's going to kickstart this thing, but we're already starting to see that what we call baroclinic leaf starting to develop here. This is a really impressive looking storm. And from a meteorological standpoint, this thing could really bomb out, which means lose pressure really rapidly and become a significant storm as it moves up the coast. So just a heads up for the Outer Banks and eastern North Carolina, we've got high wind warnings up in the purple area. So you're expecting winds above 50 or 60 miles per hour. High wind watch is still up for inland areas, so they might be upgraded to a high wind warning. Essentially, you're going to see tropical storm conditions, if not close to hurricane force winds, especially for the Outer Banks. Now, coastal flood advisories and warnings are now in effect. That includes the Neuse River to New Bern because of the northeast wind. And again, that's where the name comes from. The northeast wind is going to push water into these inlets. So coming up into New Bern, the Tar River, Neuse River, all these rivers in the eastern part of the state will be going up big time because of that potential for that northeast wind driving up the water, especially the sound water getting pushed back into some of these areas. So it's going to be a pretty significant setup for flooding. Now, as far as winds, I'm trying to time this out for the highest winds. Looks to be late Saturday into Sunday, and this is just a snapshot of our futurecast. Shows some of these wind speeds here, but I got a little better view of it on this graphic, which shows what the forecast is for the maximum winds from now until Sunday night at 7 p.m. Excuse me. So if you look closely in the Outer Banks here, you can see some of the winds, 60 to 64 mile an hour wind gust is maxing out. And then offshore, these winds here, oh, these are crazy. If you look at the top, the max wind on this map is 90.9 miles per hour. Now that'll be offshore, but any exposed area on the coast, you're looking at a pretty significant wind event here. I actually think, you're probably going to see something on the order. Let me zoom in on this. There we go. So we'll zoom in and you can see right there all along the coast here. Look at that wind speed. That's a 62 and that's a 64. So you're looking on the scale here in that 60 to 65 mile an hour range, which is pretty impressive along our coastline. So that will cause damage. And the fact that it's going to occur for maybe a 48-hour period, the duration of the wind coming out of the northeast is going to push water obviously over the islands and cause some pretty significant flooding. So let me break this down and kind of show you how this develops. We'll pull up our model here and show you as this thing develops and moves up the coast. All right, so this is our short range futurecast looking at wind speed. So what you're looking at this map is just wind speeds. I'm going to show you this first. It's contoured and the individual numbers are grid points which show basically what the model thinks the wind speed will be in that location. So I'm going to widen this out a little bit and we'll go through time here. We'll go through today and I'm going to stop this tonight at around 5:30 p.m. And you could see the winds really cranking up along the coast. But even back here in Charlotte, we're going to see gusts maybe to 25 or 30 miles an hour. And with the cold conditions, it's going to feel really chilly here. Let's go through time. We'll go into tonight. And this is when things really start to crank up. And look at some of these wind speeds showing up. This is at 7:40 a.m. tomorrow, so Saturday. Look at some of these wind speeds, and I'll probe these. You could see the winds in here over 60 miles per hour. The red is over 50. As you get back inland, You can see the winds are still around the 30 to 40 mile an hour range. So pretty strong winds, even in the Charlotte area. So if you're running the marathon tomorrow, it's going to be cold and windy, especially that northeast wind. The thing you don't see here is the winds will be coming from this direction. Again, that's where the word nor'easter comes from. Northeast winds will be howling. So let's go through time. We'll go through tomorrow morning. And we're going to stop this about mid-afternoon. We'll go 4 o'clock. So this is 4 o'clock. Look at some of these winds offshore. 70 mile an hour winds in that purple. And I'll go in closer and you could see from about, Myrtle Beach all the way up towards the Wilmington area. Now, I'm showing you wind gust in the contour, but the actual wind numbers are showing up here. But you could see some of these sustained winds, 30, 40 miles an hour. This is essentially going to be like a tropical storm or a weak hurricane on the coast. And we'll go through time. This is going into Saturday night. We'll stop this at about 9:40, and you're starting to see some really strong winds, 80 mile an hour winds offshore. And again, this is a model, but it shows you just the potential of the kind of winds we could see in some of these areas. So this is a really strong storm, folks. If you're on the Outer Banks, you need to treat this like it's a hurricane, essentially. As we go through time, you can see the storm begins to move away slowly as we go through Sunday. So the worst of this is going to be 24 hours from now. I think Saturday night is the worst weather. And I'll loop this a couple times so you can kind of see the evolution of this across the Outer Banks. So really potent storm system and really, really strong winds that we've got to pay particular attention to. And you need to prepare for potentially hurricane type conditions, especially for Saturday through Sunday morning. Things will slowly improve. I'll stop this. This is essentially going into Sunday night. So this is 7 p.m. You can see the worst of the weather starts to move out. And we're actually starting to see some better weather move into the region. So let me show you what it looks like from a radar standpoint as well. We'll show you that real quickly. So here we go. Real quickly, I'll just show you the duration of this thing from a radar standpoint. I mean, kind of looks like a tropical system the more you look at it. I mean, this is pretty impressive. I'm going to stop this right about here, though. There will be rain. I don't want to discount the rain, but the waves, the surge, and the wind are the big story with this. The rain actually just adds misery to the whole thing, but you see how this thing kind of develops and then moves off. I'll stop it right about here. So this is tomorrow morning. We'll stop this in the middle of the afternoon. So the peak of this thing is really Saturday night. You could see that strong northeast wind is going to be hammering the Outer Banks. So right here, big time impacts. Might actually be more of an impact over a bigger area than Dorian did, just to give you a heads up. This nor'easter is going to mean some serious business. So again, if you live on the Outer Banks, please be ready for significant power outages, flooding, storm surge, everything you saw with Dorian, maybe worse in some locations. And then inland areas that were not hit heavily by Dorian, that water coming in is definitely going to cause some flooding. So if you live on the coast, remember our saying, you run from the water and you hide from the wind. So if you can get to higher ground, and if you are going to stay, make sure you're ready to bunker down and hunker down from all of this wind that'll be moving through the area. Of course, I'll post updates as we go throughout the day. But folks, I tell you what, just looking at this thing on the satellite imagery, this is going to be a doozy of a nor'easter. And I think we'll be talking about this one for quite some time.